I was 13 when my parents vanished, leaving me with nothing but a note and an empty home. My wealthy uncle took me in and taught me everything. 15 years later, fate brought us face to face. You see this office? The gleaming glass, the glittering Monterey Bay, the empire I built? It's magnificent, sure. But today, on my birthday, all I feel is a profound, aching loneliness. A secret scar that this lavish success can never quite hide. I'm Elijah Mountain, 32 years old, chairman of Mountain Construction Group. And from the outside, I have it all. But trust me, outward success can be the thinnest veneer. Today, a simple birthday card from my assistant, Ella, always so thoughtful, sat on my desk. "Happy birthday, boss," it read, with a whimsical drawing. I smiled, a faint, almost automatic gesture. But then, it was like a cold wind from the past swept right through me, chilling me to the bone. This card, no matter how warm its intention, just reminded me, my birthdays have never truly been joyful. It yanked me back, hard, to the day everything shattered. My 13th birthday. The day I was discarded. Abandoned. I closed my eyes, and the memories flooded back like a torrent. I could practically smell the damp, musty wood of our small house in Eureka, Northern California. Summer there was always humid and foggy. I was just a skinny 13-year-old boy then, messy brown hair, eyes brimming with hope. School let out early that day, and I remember running, my heart pounding with pure, innocent excitement. Today was my birthday. I pictured my parents waiting. A homemade chocolate cake, Mom's favorite. Gifts wrapped in bright paper. Dad, Daniel, would pat my shoulder, say, "Son, you're growing up." Mom, Ruth, would hug me tight and sing. That's what I dreamed about, trudging home with my heavy backpack and worn-out shoes. The path was a red dirt trail, flanked by towering pine forests, birdsong echoing like the soundtrack to my perfect day. Eureka was tiny. Everyone knew everyone. Our wooden house was on the outskirts, nothing luxurious, just a simple place with a hastily tiled roof and a backyard full of weeds. But to me, it was the entire world. I pushed the door open, breathless, a wide grin splitting my face. "Dad, Mom, I'm home," I called out, my voice echoing in the sudden, eerie silence. No smell of baking. No laughter. Just the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock and dusty afternoon sunlight filtering through the windows. My smile faltered. My heart began to thud slowly with an unfamiliar dread. I dropped my backpack, the wooden floor creaking beneath my worn shoes, and shuffled into the kitchen. This was Mom's domain, the old wooden table, the humming refrigerator. And then I saw it. A small, white note, scribbled hastily with a ballpoint pen, stuck to the fridge with a heart-shaped magnet. My heart still raced, but now it was a frantic rhythm. A joke, I thought. A birthday surprise. I reached for it, hope still clinging on. I read, "Elijah, we're going to a friend's house. We'll be back in a week. Eat carefully. Mom and Dad." That was all. No happy birthday. No, we love you. No promises of gifts. Nothing. I stood there, blinking, trying to process. To a friend's house? I whispered to myself. Which friend? We had no close friends nearby. My parents, Dad a carpenter, Mom at a grocery store, were always busy. They'd never left without telling me. Never. I opened the fridge, a foolish hope for cake, but all I found were a few dry slices of bread, some expired yogurt, a withered apple. My heart began to sink, but I fought it. They'll be back soon, I told myself, a desperate, childish whisper. Maybe it's a surprise trip, and they'll throw an even bigger party when they return. That night, I lay awake, staring at the cracked wooden ceiling. The wind howled through the door cracks, making me shiver. Turning 13 was supposed to mean growing up, but now I felt smaller than ever. The next morning, I woke early, made myself a glass of milk with that dry bread, and walked to school. I couldn't let anyone know. Eureka was a small town. People gossiped. If they found out, they'd call the police, send me to an orphanage. I have to act normal, I muttered, forcing smiles at friends, pretending everything was fine. The first few days bled into a growing, gnawing anxiety. Every afternoon, I'd rush home, hoping to see Dad's car. But it was always just the empty yard, the neighbor's dog barking. I washed my clothes in cold water, hung them out, and sat under the dim desk lamp, trying to study. But my mind was a storm of questions. Asterisk, where did they go? Why no call? Asterisk, the landline stayed silent. I tried calling a few acquaintances. No one knew anything. By the third day, real fear began to set in. The dry bread was gone. I rummaged through cabinets, finding only a few cans of cold beans and some moldy crackers. My stomach growled, but I endured. At night, I'd curl under the blanket, listening to every rustle, every distant car. They'll come back, I'd whisper, tears streaming down my face. I remembered Mom's bedtime stories, Dad teaching me wood carving. Now, they were just faded echoes. On the fourth day at school, exhaustion hit. My teacher asked why I looked pale. Just a slight cold, ma'am, I lied, my smile brittle. The fear of being discovered, the crushing loneliness, grew with every passing hour. Back home, I'd sit by the window, staring at the darkening road, waiting. Every time headlights flashed, my heart leaped. It's them. But the car would always pass, leaving me in the dark. I started imagining the worst, an accident, or worse, they'd forgotten me. The thought made me tremble. The fifth day, no food. I walked to the grocery store, using the few coins in my pocket for bread and milk. The owner looked at me strangely. Where are your parents? They're busy, sir, I stammered. Back home, I ate quickly, then sat to study, but my mind was a whirlwind. In an old notebook, I wrote, Asterisk, it's been 5 days since my birthday. No one remembers. I'm so lonely. Asterisk, tears blurred the ink. On the 6th day, despair set in. I no longer felt excited, just terrified. I wandered the empty house, touching their things. Dad's jacket, Mom's scarf, still faintly scented. Why? I screamed in my head. I tried calling an aunt far away, but no answer. That night was a fitful sleep of nightmares. I saw myself abandoned in a forest, calling out, no response. Then came the 7th day. A sliver of hope. They said they'd be back in a week. I cleaned the house, imagining their surprise. But the sun set. Darkness fell. No car. I sat by the fridge, staring at that note again. The hasty writing, no final punctuation, as if they'd been in such a rush to leave. They couldn't spare another second. And then the truth hit me. It wasn't a trip. It was a slap. They hadn't gone anywhere. They had abandoned me. That note wasn't a promise. It was their quiet, brutal way of vanishing from a child's life. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, tears pouring, my heart tearing. Why? What did I do wrong? I sobbed, my cries echoing in the empty house. My 13th birthday. Not a joyful day, but the beginning of hell. I didn't know what the future held, only that I was alone. The days that followed were a hazy fog of hunger and despair. My stomach growled like a wild beast. I drank tap water, but it only made me dizzier, my body visibly weakening. My legs trembled. My mind swam with blurry images of past family meals. On the 10th day, or maybe the 11th, time had blurred. I lay on the floor, staring at the cracked ceiling. What do I do now? I whispered, my voice raw from crying. I thought about the police, but the fear of an orphanage held me back. In Eureka, people gossiped about those places, cold, full of forgotten kids. I didn't want to be one of them. Hunger, finally, won. On a morning thick with fog, when the sun barely pierced the gray clouds, I decided to leave. I put on Dad's old jacket, swallowed by its 2 big sleeves, and stuffed my last few coins into my pocket. The house door creaked. The cold sea wind rushed in, carrying a salty, bitter scent. The red dirt road stretched endlessly. Each step felt heavy, weighted with lead. I walked slowly, head bowed, avoiding familiar faces. What if someone asks? My heart pounded. What will I say? The bus station, on the edge of town, was a dusty place, full of trucks and passing travelers. My stomach twisted. Just a bit of food, I muttered, tears welling. Asterisk, what if no one helps? What if I'm chased away like a beggar? Asterisk, then, a silver truck pulled up just meters away. A tall man, about 50, stepped out. Brown leather jacket, salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes scanning. He was Benjamin Mountain, my uncle, though I didn't know it then. He was just a tired traveler, refueling. As he approached the pump, his gaze accidentally swept over me. A skinny boy huddled, dirty, but strangely familiar. He paused, frowning as if trying to recall a distant memory. My heart skipped. Run, I thought, but my body was too weak. He stopped in front of me, his voice deep, warm, laced with concern. Hey kid, what are you doing here alone? What's your name? I looked up, eyes red and swollen. There was something about him that didn't scare me. Maybe the gentle smile, the way he crouched to my eye level. My name is Elijah, I stammered, my voice trembling. My house is nearby, but I'm looking for food. He didn't press. Instead, he pulled a chocolate bar from his pocket and handed it to me. Eat this. You look starving. I tore into it, devouring it greedily, the bittersweet taste making new tears fall. He sat down beside me. Where's your home? Your parents. I hesitated, then everything poured out like a river bursting its banks. My birthday, the note, the days alone. When I mentioned the name Mountain and that my dad's name was Daniel, he froze. His face paled. Daniel, my brother, he muttered, his eyes wide with shock. I didn't understand then, but later I learned Benjamin was Dad's younger brother, estranged for years over a bitter inheritance dispute. He'd never met me, but he recognized the family face, those eyes, and the rare surname. Take me to your house, he said, his voice firm, full of worry. I nodded. On the way back, I told him everything. When we arrived, he looked around the empty house, saw the note. His face darkened. They left you, he whispered, his voice thick with rage. He turned, pulling me into a tight embrace. The first embrace after so many lonely days. It's not your fault, Elijah. I'll take you with me. Suspense surged. Go with a stranger? But he wasn't a stranger. He was my uncle. And in his eyes, I saw pure sincerity. He briefly explained the family rift, then called the local police, convincing them he was family, that he would care for me. He packed my few things, clothes, books, an old family photo, and we got into his truck. The drive from Eureka to Carmel by the Sea lasted hours, but it felt like a dream. He bought hot sandwiches, fresh milk, fruit, which I devoured in the truck. He told me about his life, a small construction company, Mountain Construction Group, an old stone house by the sea in Carmel. It's a peaceful place. You'll like it, he said, his voice warm. I sat watching the scenery, the pine forests giving way to rugged coastlines, waves crashing white. The fear gradually faded, replaced by a fragile hope. When we arrived, the sun had set. The old stone house appeared under dim streetlights, sturdy, gray stone walls, red-tiled roof, a garden full of wildflowers. Inside, it was cozy, a crackling fireplace, the faint scent of pine wood. He led me to my own room, small, clean, with a soft bed and books. From now on, this is your home, he said, patting my shoulder. That was the first time I felt truly safe. The early years with Uncle Benjamin in Carmel were a new beginning, a life of discipline and order, so different from the chaos I'd known. Every morning, he'd wake at dawn, brewing strong black coffee, and call me up, Elijah, a new day has begun. Don't let time slip away. I was a groggy kid, but I got used to it. We'd have breakfast, toast, eggs, fresh fruit. He'd always say, eating is to live, not living to eat. Be grateful for what you have. He taught me discipline through the smallest things. An old leather-bound notebook. From now on, you'll track every expense. Even a penny for candy. Write it down. I'd clumsily calculate, and he'd patiently explain, money doesn't grow on trees, Elijah. It comes from labor, and labor is the foundation of self-respect. Manage money, and you'll manage your life. We'd go to the market, choosing fresh, cheap vegetables, and he'd teach me to bargain politely. Saving isn't stinginess, he'd say, eyes twinkling. It's respecting your own sweat. Uncle Benjamin didn't give me luxuries, but real love through simple, profound lessons. He taught me to cook, repair things, manage time. Every evening, by the fireplace, he'd tell stories about the Mountain family, his construction projects. True strength doesn't come from money, Elijah, he'd say, his voice calm. It comes from maintaining your character when no one's around. You're stronger than you think. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. I grew up quickly under his love and discipline. At the local school, overlooking the ocean, I excelled. At first, I was shy, afraid of friends asking about my past. But gradually, I became an outstanding student. My classmates liked me, teachers praised me. Elijah is the most mature boy in class. Uncle Benjamin beamed with pride. Every weekend, he'd take me to the Mountain Construction Group office, a simple wooden building smelling of concrete and fresh wood, and show me off to the staff. This is my nephew, the future of the company. I'd blush, but my heart warmed. That was the first time I felt real recognition, not from blood, but from my own efforts. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In that house, there was also David, Uncle Benjamin's biological son, a few years older than me. David was about 17 then, tall, broad, with blonde hair and a charming smile. But his eyes were always cold when he looked at me. At first, it wasn't outright hatred, just long glances, sarcastic remarks. "Dad, why'd you bring home some random kid?" he once whispered, loud enough for me to hear. Uncle Benjamin tried to explain, "This is Elijah, my real nephew, your Uncle Daniel's son. He needs us." But David wouldn't accept it. Uncle said David grew up spoiled after his mother died young, so he compensated by giving him everything. Now, the attention Uncle gave me made David feel threatened. The jealousy festered. As I excelled, David grew more distant. At school, he was popular, but his grades were mediocre. Every time I brought home an excellent report card, Uncle Benjamin would smile proudly. "Elijah, you've done great." David would sit at the corner of the table, face darkening, muttering sarcastically, "Oh, the picked-up kid is so talented, huh?" Dad forgot his own son. My heart would tighten, but I stayed silent, not wanting to upset Uncle. Uncle tried to mediate. "David, you can do it too if you try." But David would just smirk, diving into his own world, partying on the beach, borrowing Uncle's car for night outings. I'd hear the car return late, smell the faint alcohol, and see Uncle shake his head sadly. Suspense began to creep into our peaceful life. I sensed the tension, silent dinners where David ate quickly and left. "Why does he hate me?" I once asked Uncle. He sighed. "He's afraid of losing his dad, Elijah. But I love you both." I nodded, but deep down I worried. Would David do something to drive me away? Those nights, I'd lie awake, listening to the waves, wondering if this happiness would last. Time passed. The year I turned 18, I graduated valedictorian with a university scholarship. But I chose to stay in Carmel, studying construction management online while working for my uncle. David, after barely graduating, was forced by Uncle to work at Mountain Construction Group. "Both of you work to learn," Uncle said, hoping it would bring us closer. I started from the bottom, a humble site assistant. Every day, I'd wake early, put on my gear, and dive into work, measuring blueprints, supervising, calculating costs. "You're doing well," Uncle praised. The staff liked my enthusiasm. I quickly proved my ability. On a small seaside bridge project, I suggested a way to save materials while keeping it durable, and Uncle nodded in approval. David was the opposite. He'd arrive late, in a neat suit, but do nothing but scroll on his phone in the office. He sank into partying, spending extravagantly on new cars, designer clothes, weekend getaways. "I'm the boss's son. Why get dirty like the picked-up kid?" He'd smirk when he saw me, filthy from the sight. Uncle Benjamin warned him many times. "David, labor is the foundation. Don't disappoint me." But each warning only made David more resentful. He'd whisper to staff that I was just good at buttering up Dad. "He's taking all the affection I deserve," he'd fume. I'd overhear, my heart aching, but I focused on work. Suspense grew. What would David do? Once, he deliberately messed up a blueprint I'd assigned, causing delays, and Uncle had to intervene. Those years passed in a fragile balance. The company grew, thanks to Uncle's and my efforts. But David's shadow loomed larger. I remember one stormy evening when David came home drunk, slamming the door, yelling, "Dad, why are you letting that kid manage everything? I'm your real son." Uncle stayed silent, but I saw him tremble. My heart raced, suspense building. Would this family break apart? I didn't know, only that I had to be strong for Uncle and for myself. Everything changed on a chilly autumn afternoon. Uncle Benjamin returned from the hospital, his face weary, eyes deep-set, breathing labored. He sat in his armchair by the fireplace, holding a diagnosis paper, and called me over. "Elijah, I have chronic pulmonary fibrosis," he said, his voice calm, but I heard the tremor. It was a vicious disease, the lungs gradually stiffening, turning breathing into a battle. The doctor said it progressed slowly, but for my uncle, who had worked tirelessly his whole life, it was a silent storm. He weakened day by day, from dry coughs to needing oxygen. He stayed home, no longer going to the office, just sitting by the window, gazing at the sea, where the waves lapped steadily, like his fading heartbeat. I looked at him, my heart tightening. He had once been a strong, tall man, calloused hands from construction sites. Now he was frail, skin pale, every step a wheezing breath. "Don't worry, Uncle. I'll take care of you," I said, forcing my voice steady. From that day on, I put work aside to be by his side. I noted his medication schedule, those small, crucial pills, antibiotics to pain relievers, reminding him to take them. I took him to physical therapy, driving slowly along the winding coastal roads, the salty sea breeze blowing through the windows. He sat in the passenger seat, oxygen tube around his nose, and we'd talk about old memories, the day he found me, the company's first projects. Those trips were filled with suspense. Would he suddenly tire? Would a coughing fit strike? I always kept a spare oxygen tank ready, my heart racing every time he gasped for breath. Late at night, when he finally slept, I'd breathe a sigh of relief, then immediately worry about the morning. Life became a string of suspenseful days, each of his breaths a reminder of its fragility. David visited occasionally, but always with evident impatience. He'd drive up in a shiny sports car, park in the yard, step inside in his neat suit, but his eyes always darted to his watch. "Dad, I'm here to visit," he'd say in a fake tone, sitting for barely 10 minutes before standing. "I'm busy in the city. See you next time." Uncle Benjamin would look at him sadly. "Stay for dinner, David." But David always refused, citing work or parties. I'd stand in the kitchen, hearing it all, my heart aching. Did he realize Uncle was weakening? Or was he just waiting for something else? Every time he saw me caring for Uncle, David would drop sarcastic remarks, like needles piercing the quiet air. Once, while I was helping Uncle with his oxygen tube, David walked in and smirked. "Oh, the picked-up kid playing the dutiful son again. No matter how hard you try, you're just a side character in this family." He continued, his voice louder, "The real heir is always the biological son, not someone picked up from a bus station." Those words cut like knives, stirring memories of Eureka. But I chose silence. I knew Uncle needed peace more than pointless arguments. "David, that's enough," Uncle said weakly. But David just shrugged and left, leaving a heavy atmosphere. I turned back to Uncle, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Don't mind him, Uncle." But deep down, suspense surged. Would David's hatred explode? Would he do something to push me out of the picture? Winter arrived, bringing cold winds and thick fog. One early winter morning, I woke, brewed coffee, and stepped into Uncle's room. He lay there peacefully asleep. But when I called, he didn't respond. My heart skipped a beat. I approached and touched his hand cold. "Uncle!" I screamed, my voice breaking. He had passed in his sleep, leaving a vast emptiness in the quiet house. I collapsed by the bed, tears streaming, memories flooding, the day he saved me, lessons by the fireplace, his proud smile. The house was silent, only the distant waves crashing like a farewell. I called the doctor, then David, my voice trembling. "Brother. David. Uncle, he's gone." He was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm coming right away." The pain tore at my heart, but I had to be strong. Arrange the funeral, notify the staff. The funeral took place by the seaside, under a gray sky. We scattered his ashes to the wind, as he had instructed, let me return to the sea. Then came the day of the will reading. In the small lawyer's office in Central Carmel, with dark wooden walls and a heavy atmosphere, I sat next to David. He was in a black suit, his face cold, but I sensed his coiled suspense. The lawyer, an old man with glasses, opened the yellowed folder. According to Benjamin Mountain's will, all assets, shares in Mountain Construction Group, and real estate will go to Elijah Mountain. The air froze. I was stunned. My heart raced. All of it? I'd never even thought of that. David gave an incredulous smile, as if waiting for a joke. Then his face flushed red, anger spreading. He jumped up, slamming the table with a loud crack, snatching the will. What the hell is this? Forgery. This is forgery, he yelled, his voice shrill, face twisted. That Elijah manipulated Dad when he was sick. He was by Dad's side the whole time, forcing him to sign this. I sat still, not reacting, but my heart ached. Those accusations were like stabbing knives. The lawyer tried to intervene. The will was made 2 years ago, when Mr. Benjamin was healthy, and it's notarized. But David didn't listen. He threw a glass, shattering it on the floor, threatening to sue everyone. I won't let you steal everything. I'm the real son. Chaos ensued. People tried to hold him back, but David shoved them away, his eyes bloodshot, glaring at me. I still sat silent, the quiet between us suffocating. That was the moment everything shifted. From now on, I was no longer the rescued child, but the one bearing the entire legacy, along with the curse of the Mountain family. By the way, if you're still with me, completely engrossed in this wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, more unbelievable stories are coming your way. After that reading, David stormed out of the lawyer's office, red-faced with rage. He didn't even glance at me, just bolted, his heels pounding on the wooden floor. I faintly heard him muttering, "He stole everything from me, everything." From then on, David vanished from Mountain Construction Group. He sent a curt resignation email, no explanation, and cut all contact. But I knew deep in his heart, hatred was boiling. He believed I had stolen everything that was rightfully his, the company, the house, Uncle Benjamin's legacy. To him, I wasn't a brother or even a nephew. I was just an outsider who had manipulated his way in. I sat alone in the Carmel office, gazing at the gray sea, my heart heavy. Suspense began to creep in. What would he do? I tried to push the thought away, focusing on taking over the company, but deep down, I sensed a shadow enveloping everything. The first weeks after Uncle Benjamin's funeral were truly difficult. I had to stabilize the company, meet with employees, sign new contracts, handle the pile of will documents. Everyone at Mountain Construction looked at me with respect, but also worry. Boss Elijah, where's David? I'd just smile faintly. He needs some time. But in reality, I didn't know where David was. He'd moved to Los Angeles, renting a luxurious apartment with the little savings he had left, and began plotting. I didn't know anything at first. Everything happened in the shadows, like a brewing storm. David, fueled by burning jealousy, started contacting our competitors, big construction firms on the West Coast, always eager to swallow up Mountain Construction. He'd meet them in dimly lit bars, whispering exchanges of secret project information he had accessed while still working there. Elijah is laundering money through the company, he'd fabricate, his voice full of hatred. I have proof. Shady expenses, international transfers. Those lies spread like venom, making some partners hesitate. I noticed the first sign when a major project, building a seaside residential area in Monterey, had its information leaked. We were preparing to bid with a detailed plan known only to a few. Suddenly, our main competitors submitted an identical proposal with slightly lower costs. How did they? I wondered, sitting in the office, my hands trembling as I held the report. Employees whispered, maybe it's a coincidence. But I felt something was terribly wrong. Suspense grew. Someone was betraying us. I strengthened security, changed system passwords, but it was too late. David had gone further. He used his remaining money to hire hackers, the kind lurking in the dark web, specializing in dirty work. They breached the company's system through a small vulnerability, stealing bid files, internal emails, and anonymously sending them to the local press. The next morning, I opened the newspaper. My heart skipped. The headline blared, Mountain Construction suspected of money laundering. Internal info leaked. The article quoted project details, along with accusations that I was hiding illegal transactions. The phone rang off the hook. Partners called to question, employees panicked, and the company's stock plummeted. I slumped into my chair, my mind reeling. Who did this? I muttered, clenching the newspaper. The pain from Uncle Benjamin's death still lingered, now compounded by the fear of losing everything. I hired cybersecurity experts. They confirmed the system was hacked remotely, with traces leading to an IP address in Los Angeles. My heart pounded. David. But I didn't dare believe it. Meanwhile, David smirked in his apartment, watching the news. He'll collapse, he thought, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. But the plan wasn't enough. When he saw my company still holding firm, thanks to me transparently releasing all our books, proving every accusation false, David went mad. It's not over yet, he muttered, moving to the next step, hiring people to tail me. From then on, my life became a series of dramatically suspenseful days. I sensed it, strange cars outside the office, shadows following me as I drove home. One evening, on the winding coastal road in Carmel, the strong sea wind blowing through the window, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a black car tailing me closely. My heart pounded. Who are they? I sped up, but the black car did too. Then suddenly, it surged forward, forcing my car toward the cliff. The screech of metal colliding pierced the air. My car flipped sideways, rolling several times down the slope. I woke up in the hospital, my head throbbing, my body bruised. Luckily, only minor injuries, broken ribs, a few cuts. The doctor said, "You nearly died." I lay there, staring at the white ceiling, tears streaming. Why? Who wants to kill me? The police investigated. They found the offending car abandoned nearby and traced its license plate. It belonged to a small transport company in Los Angeles, secretly registered under David's name through a shell company. The shock hit like lightning. I sat in that hospital room, holding the police report, my hands shaking. David, my brother, the one who grew up with me under Uncle Benjamin's roof, had staged an accident to kill me. My heart ached, not from fear, but from profound sadness. Why such hatred? I whispered. The investigation expanded quickly, revealing a series of illegal transactions. David had bribed officials for information, illegally transferred money to hackers and stalkers, all to serve his revenge. The police raided his house in Los Angeles, a lavish apartment with expensive furnishings, and arrested him on the spot. David struggled, yelling, "I'm innocent. It's Elijah's fault." But the evidence piled up. Emails, bank transfers, confessions from the arrested hacker. The trial took place in a Los Angeles courtroom, under glaring neon lights, a tense atmosphere. I flew there, sitting in the audience, not resentful, just silently observing. David appeared in prisoner garb, his face gaunt, his eyes avoiding mine. The prosecutor presented the evidence, from selling information to hiring hackers, then the accident, all proving attempted murder, intentional injury, and corporate finance violations. David defended, "I was robbed of my inheritance. Elijah manipulated my dad." But the judge shook his head. That's no excuse for crime. The sentence was pronounced, 20 years in prison. David collapsed, sobbing, but I just quietly left without a word. My heart was heavy. He had once been my brother, even if not by blood. Now, just a ghost of hatred. After the trial, I returned to Carmel, holding a press conference to reveal the full truth. Mountain Construction is clean, I said, my voice steady, presenting transparent evidence. The company's reputation was cleared. Partners returned. Projects continued. The story closed with the one harboring jealousy paying the price for his own hatred. David sitting in prison, reflecting on his mistakes. And I, for the first time, lived truly free from the shadows of the past. The Carmel Sea still crashed its waves, and I stood there, feeling the sea breeze carry away all burdens. But freedom, no matter how sweet, was just a lull before a new storm. After David's trial, I officially took over Mountain Construction Group as chairman, the position Uncle Benjamin had trusted me to inherit. The Carmel office, with its glass walls overlooking the deep blue sea, now became my center. The waves lapped steadily, like my stabilized heartbeat. I began restructuring the organization immediately, not out of ambition, but to honor Uncle's legacy. The company, once shaken by David's accusations, now needed a fresh push. I fired a few dishonest employees, those David had bribed, and hired young, passionate engineers. We expanded into green infrastructure, building structures using solar energy, rainwater recycling, eco-friendly urban areas. We're not just building houses, I said in my first meeting, my voice warm but firm, but also constructing a sustainable future for the next generations. The first months were so busy I forgot to eat. Every morning, I'd wake at dawn, brew strong black coffee like Uncle used to, and sit at the old wooden table where he'd told his stories. I'd review financial reports, negotiate with suppliers, lead the team. My personal life changed too. I bought a small house by the sea, not far from the company, with a garden full of wildflowers and the soothing sound of waves. I started jogging every morning, feeling the salty sea breeze, as if chasing away old memories. Friends, close colleagues invited me out, but I'd often decline, choosing to be alone to think. "Elijah, you need to live for yourself," Ella, my assistant, once said. She was the only one who knew the whole story, and sometimes we'd sit, drinking coffee, sharing about the past. A year passed in a flash. That summer, the government announced a project to build an eco-urban area along the Monterey coast. A massive contract, the largest in the company's history. A green city with thousands of eco-friendly apartments, parks, schools, sustainable transportation. The contract value reached billions of dollars, potentially deciding Mountain Construction's future. Win, and we'd expand nationwide. Lose, and we'd have to cut staff. The news spread quickly, and my office was flooded with calls. "This is a golden opportunity," I told the leadership in an emergency meeting, my voice full of excitement, but also worry. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a project. It was a challenge to prove myself after all the upheavals. I personally led the bidding team. We worked tirelessly, day and night, coffee and pizza our companions. I drew designs, calculated costs, met with environmental experts to ensure the green aspect was genuine, recycled materials, offshore wind energy, advanced water filtration. "We have to excel," I motivated the team, my eyes sparkling. After many fierce elimination rounds, dozens of major competitors were knocked out, giant companies from New York or Texas with huge budgets, but lacking creativity. Each round was a battle, presenting ideas, answering questions from the state committee, waiting for results in suspense. I remember the night before the third elimination round. I couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. What would Uncle Benjamin think if we lose, but we advanced? Finally, only two companies remained, Mountain Construction and a firm called Summit Design and Build. An unfamiliar name. But their profile showed strength in high-end construction. When reviewing the competitor's project profile, sent via email from the committee, I froze as if struck by lightning. I sat in the office, afternoon sunlight streaming through the window onto the screen. In the leadership list, the name Daniel Mountain appeared, crystal clear. My biological father, founder and chairman. Next to it was Ruth Mountain, my biological mother, as financial director. My heart clenched as if squeezed. A flood of memories rushed back like a torrent. The hastily scribbled note on the fridge. "We're going to a friend's house. We'll be back in a week." The empty wooden house, wind howling. And me, a 13-year-old boy huddled, waiting. The old, rain-soaked bus station where I wandered hungry, hoping someone would recognize me. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from rage and a chilling clarity. They, my biological parents, they had abandoned me all those years ago, and now, successful, with their own company, they had never once sought me out. No calls, no letters, nothing. "Do they know I'm here?" I muttered, my hand clenching the mouse. Summit Design and Build. The name sounded foreign, but now it was like a knife reopening an old wound. I stood up, walked to the balcony, looking out at the glistening Monterey Bay. The sea breeze blew strongly, carrying the salty scent, but it couldn't dispel the storm in my heart. Why no? I asked myself, heart racing. This project wasn't just bidding. It was a confrontation with the past I thought I'd buried. Daniel and Ruth, once my parents, now competitors. I imagined their faces. Dad with salt and pepper hair. Mom with a fake smile. They had built Summit from nothing after abandoning me. And now they wanted to snatch my opportunity. Rage surged. Have they ever regretted it? But mixed in was a chill, the pain of the abandoned child, now a man, facing them. I knew if I withdrew, I'd avoid the bitter confrontation. Just send an email to the committee, Mountain Construction withdraws. That would be it. No face-to-face, no memories flooding back, no pain. I sat back down, looking at the profile again, heart pounding as I gripped the mouse. Withdrawing is easy, I thought. Asterisk, but if I do that, I deny everything I've strived to prove. From the abandoned boy in Eureka, to the one rescued by Uncle Benjamin, then overcoming David's plot. All to prove I'm worthy. Asterisk withdrawing meant admitting the past still controlled me, that I was still afraid. No. I shook my head, tears streaming. I wouldn't let them win without a fight. I decided to continue. I called a leadership meeting that very evening, in the brightly lit conference room with the faint smell of coffee. Mountain Construction will see this through, I said, my voice resolute, though my heart still trembled. Not for fame, but to prove the value of those who know how to build with integrity. Everyone nodded, but I saw worried eyes. Boss, the competitor is strong. I smiled. We're stronger because we have heart. From then on, we dove into preparations, refining designs, gathering environmental data, practicing presentations. Each day was a suspenseful battle. Did they know who I was? Would the past repeat? I lost sleep many nights, lying there thinking about the upcoming encounter, my heart pounding like a drum. The weeks leading up to the final presentation were the most stressful time in my life. The Mountain Construction Group office in Carmel became a real battlefield, papers piled high, computer screens glowing all night, the incessant clacking of keyboards. Every morning, I jog along the beach to chase away my worries. But the sea breeze only brought that salty, bitter scent, reminding me of the days wandering in Eureka. Who are they to me now? I asked myself, my feet pounding hard on the wet sand. Daniel and Ruth, my biological parents, were now competitors with their powerful Summit design and build. I researched them stealthily, like a thief. They had built Summit in the years after abandoning me, starting with small projects in Southern California, then expanding into an empire. Not a single mention of their son. My heart ached. Have they never looked for me? Every time I reviewed Summit's profile, I'd pause at the names Daniel and Ruth. Memories flooding back, my father's stern face teaching me wood carving, my mother's warm smile telling bedtime stories. Then, the note on the fridge. The empty house. The enormous loneliness. Why? I whispered in the night, staring at the ceiling. Rage mixed with fear. If I met them, could I stay calm? Would they recognize me? Elijah Mountain, the child they left behind? The day of the final presentation arrived like a crashing storm. I drove to the state government headquarters in Sacramento, a few hours from Carmel. The coastal highway wound along, the strong sea breeze blowing through the window, carrying the scent of pine forests and ocean. My heart pounded the whole way. Today is the day. I wore a neat black suit, hair combed, but my hands gripped the steering wheel until they turned white. Stay calm, I whispered. The headquarters was a modern glass building, the California state flag fluttering proudly. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The atmosphere inside buzzed, hallways full of people, lively chatter, reporters with cameras, investors in elegant suits, state officials bustling. I picked up my attendee badge, my heart pounding. Have they arrived yet? The large conference room was brightly lit with white neon lights, a long U-shaped wooden table, a massive projection screen. The seats were packed, about 100 people, from reporters to experts. Murmurs echoed, the smell of coffee and perfume mingling. I walked in composed, but my heart heavy. My team sat on one side, nodding encouragement. Then I saw them. Daniel and Ruth sitting opposite, representing Summit Design and Build. My father, now about 60, with white hair, a stern face etched with deep wrinkles. My mother, still elegant, hair neatly bunched, but her eyes averted. They didn't look at me right away, whispering to their team. My heart skipped. They know, reporters whispered, 2 companies with the same mountain name? Strange. I sat down, my hands slightly trembling, memory surging like wild waves. The rainy Eureka bus station, Uncle Benjamin saving me. Now, facing those who abandoned me. I felt like that 13-year-old boy again. But I pushed it away. I am Elijah Mountain, chairman. The chairperson, a high-ranking state official, rapped the gavel. The meeting will begin. Today, we'll hear presentations from the 2 final candidates, Mountain Construction Group and Summit Design and Build. A pause. Mountain Construction's name was called first. Daniel paused slightly. I saw it clearly. He stopped whispering, his eyes widening as he looked at me. Ruth bowed her head, her hands clenching the documents, not daring to look directly. My heart pounded. They know. I stood up, stepped to the podium, the microphone in front. The lights were blinding, but I stayed calm. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady. Mountain Construction Group is proud to present the Monterey Eco-Urban Project, a sustainable vision for the future. I presented professionally, each word honed. I spoke about our sustainable strategy, 100% solar energy, rainwater recycling, native greenery to reduce carbon. Slides projected, transparent charts, data verified by independent experts. I emphasized costs, every expense transparent, no hidden fees, ensuring long-term benefits for the community. The project will create jobs for locals, build free schools and parks, in the true spirit of building not just homes, but lives. That was what Uncle Benjamin had taught. Build with integrity, Elijah. I spoke with a stirred heart, memories of him flooding back, but I didn't show it. Reporters scribbled furiously. Investors nodded. Daniel and Ruth sat silent. He was staring at me intently. She was still with her head down. Suspense surged. What are they thinking? My part ended amid applause. I sat down, sweat beading on my forehead, but my heart somewhat lighter. Then it was Summit Design and Build's turn. Daniel stood, his voice deep, but confident. Summit is proud to bring a world-class project. Their presentation was impressive, flashy slides, stunning 3D images, promising the most luxurious urban area on the West Coast. But I noticed the showiness. Unusually low-cost figures, lacking independent verification, focused more on profits than community. We commit to early completion, Ruth added, her voice slightly trembling, still avoiding my gaze. Where's the sustainability data from? A reporter asked. They stammered. From internal sources. My heart raced. They're exposing weaknesses. Throughout the meeting, I stayed calm, avoiding any personal emotions. When the committee asked me why choose sustainability, I answered, because we're building for future generations, not short-term profits. Daniel looked at me, something flashing in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps regret. I didn't know. I just focused on the composure of an adult. I faced the past with respect. Respect for myself, not them. The meeting lasted 2 hours, with relentless questions. The atmosphere was tense to the point of suffocation. Each answer was a battle. Would the committee see the difference? Would reporters dig into the Mountain family connection? Finally, the meeting ended in silence. The chairperson rapped the gavel. Thank you to both sides. Results will be announced later. Sparse applause. Everyone stood. I stepped out of that room, my legs slightly shaky, but my head held high. Reporters swarmed. Mr. Elijah, what's your relationship with Summit? I smiled. Just competitors. But in my heart, I knew this wasn't just bidding. It was the first time I directly faced those who abandoned me. And this time, I wouldn't bow my head. The drive back to Carmel stretched endlessly. The sea breeze blew, and I felt a true freedom. No longer afraid of the past. A week later, the suspense reached its peak. The bidding results were announced at the Monterey Conference Center, a modern seaside building with a large hall and brightly lit stage. I accepted the invitation to attend, though my heart still raced every time I thought about it. It was a major event. Media gathered, cameras flashing incessantly, big businesses from across the West Coast, state officials in the front row. I wore a simple gray suit, entering the hall with my team. Ella was by my side, whispering, "Boss, we'll win." But I wasn't sure. Summit was strong, and with Daniel and Ruth leading, they might pull some tricks. The atmosphere was stifling, murmurs echoing. Two mountain companies, strange. I sat in the row reserved for candidates, my heart pounding like a drum. Opposite, Daniel and Ruth sat there, he with a stern face, she with careful makeup, but anxious eyes. They avoided looking at me, but I sensed the tension. The ceremony began with a speech from the state governor, praising the Eco-Urban project as the future of California. Then came the announcement. The chairperson, a middle-aged man with a booming voice, held the microphone. After careful consideration, the winning bidder is Mountain Construction Group. My company's name rang out, the hall erupting in applause. I stood up, bowing slightly. My heart was a mix of pride and emptiness. Pride because we won, the billion-dollar project that would transform Monterey, creating jobs for thousands. But emptiness because this victory wasn't just a deal. It was an answer to the past. I had defeated the very people who once abandoned me on the very business battlefield they pursued. My heart tightened. Asterisk, this is for Uncle Benjamin. And for that 13-year-old boy, asterisk in the opposite row, Daniel froze. His face drained of life as if all vitality had been sucked out. He sat motionless, eyes wide, staring at the stage, his hands gripping the armrests until they turned white. Ruth tried to stay composed, but her hands trembled as she clapped along with the crowd. Her gaze darted toward me, a flash of panic before quickly averting. They hadn't expected it. Hadn't expected that the son they left behind at 13 in Eureka would be the one to defeat them on this stage. I saw the shock clearly. Daniel whispered something to his assistant, his face pale, while Ruth bit her lip, her eyes red and swollen. Reporters rushed to take photos, and I faintly heard murmurs. Summit lost? They looked shocked. My heart raced. Would they approach me? Would there be any explanation after all these years? But there wasn't. The ceremony ended quickly. People congratulated me, handshakes, pats on the back. Congratulations, Mr. Mountain. I smiled in response, but my eyes still glanced toward them. Daniel and Ruth left hastily, weaving through the crowd without a word. I stood there amid the applause, but my heart was heavy. The victory was sweet, but also bitter. It stirred memories I thought I'd buried. The media quickly exploited the story. The next morning, local papers published, two mountain companies clash. Who wins? They dug deep, interviewing former employees, and then the bomb dropped. A former Summit employee, who once worked with Daniel, revealed the family connection. Daniel and Ruth had a son, but they abandoned the boy at 13 to pursue their careers, he said in an interview with the Monterey Herald. The news spread like wildfire, from local papers to statewide, onto social media with the hashtag Mountain Family Drama. Public outrage surged. How could they abandon their own child for money? What kind of parents are they? Articles detailed my story, from the abandoned boy in Eureka to the successful chairman, and condemned Daniel and Ruth as betrayers. Reporters called me nonstop. Mr. Elijah, comment on your biological parents? I declined. I'm focused on the project. The public buzzed. Daniel and Ruth didn't comment. Their silence only fueled the fire. Some Summit partners paused collaborations, emails canceling meetings, calls declining. A few shareholders demanded clarification. We don't want to be involved in a family scandal. Summit Design and Build fell into a defensive position. Their stock plummeted on the small exchange. I followed from afar, through the press, my heart pounding. Justice is unfolding. Daniel tried to control the situation. He issued a press release. We respect the committee's decision and congratulate our competitor. Regarding personal matters, that's private past. But the company's image was clearly damaged. Employees quit, other projects delayed. Ruth was devastated. According to rumors, she avoided public appearances while Daniel faced the collapse of the reputation and career he'd built his whole life. Daniel tried to reassure the press in an emergency meeting, but every justification became meaningless. "We did what was best at the time," he said, his voice trembling before the microphones, but the crowd jeered. "Best for whom? For your son." Ruth didn't appear, but old photos of her circulated, her fake smile beside Daniel, now a symbol of betrayal. I stayed silent, issuing no statements. I understood that justice had done its part. No need for another word from the one once left behind. But in my heart, the pain still lingered. Do they regret it? I sat at my desk, looking at the new project contract, but my mind wandered. This victory brought freedom, but also reopened old wounds. The days following the announcement saw public opinion gradually subside, but for me, it was like an undercurrent still rippling. The press shifted to praising Mountain Construction Group, the ethical company that defeated the giant. Congratulatory calls poured in nonstop. I received them with a polite smile. But every night, lying in bed in my seaside house in Carmel, I'd think about Daniel and Ruth. Their faces in the Sacramento meeting room still haunted me. My father's stunned expression, my mother's averted gaze. Did they truly hurt? I asked myself, listening to the waves crashing outside. That victory wasn't revenge. It was the result of effort. But it made me realize that the past had never truly left. It had only hibernated, waiting for a chance to awaken. Our company expanded rapidly. My life now was busy but peaceful. Mornings jogging along the beach, afternoons in meetings, evenings reading by the fireplace. Ella, my assistant, had become a close friend. "You've changed, boss. You seem freer." I smiled. Maybe so, but that freedom was still fragile. I often thought about Daniel and Ruth, following scattered news about Summit. Their company was crumbling. Projects canceled, mass resignations, shareholder lawsuits. One article read, "Summit Design and Build, from peak to abyss due to family scandal." My heart tightened each time I read it. Not from glee, but from sadness. "They were once my parents," I whispered. Suspense crept in. Asterisk, would they contact me? Would there be any explanation after all these years of silence? Asterisk, I pushed the thought away, focusing on work, but deep down, the wound still bled. Then, one late year afternoon, when California's winter brought cold winds and thick fog enveloping Monterey, the office phone rang loudly. Ella picked up, then looked at me with a strange expression. "Boss, Mr. Daniel and Mrs. Ruth Mountain request a meeting. They say it's personal." My heart skipped as if squeezed. "Them," I muttered, my hand clenching the pen. Suspense surged. After all this time, after the victory, they came. "Let them in," I said, my voice calm, but my mind reeling. I stood up, looking out at Monterey Bay through the glass, the waves crashing strongly, heavy gray clouds. Asterisk, what will I say? How will I feel? Asterisk, memories flooded. The note on the fridge, the empty Eureka house, the enormous loneliness. But I took a deep breath. I'm not that boy anymore. They entered the office. Daniel and Ruth. They looked much older than at Sacramento. Daniel, now nearly 70, with snow-white hair, slightly hunched, wearing an old coat. Ruth, wrinkled skin, dark circles under her eyes, a simple long dress. They looked tired, their eyes heavy with regret. No longer the confident entrepreneurs. "Elijah," Daniel said first, his voice thin and trembling. They sat down opposite me, their hands clasped tightly as if seeking support. The office was silent, only the ticking clock and the howling wind outside. My heart raced, suspense building. Asterisk, what are they here for? To apologize? Or to demand? Asterisk, Daniel cleared his throat, his eyes on the floor. We were here to apologize. Those words exploded, slowly, in my heart. Ruth continued, her voice choked. That year, we left you behind. We thought it was for the best. At the time, we were poor, no future, and we wanted to start over. But it was the biggest mistake of our lives. They recounted their story, voices trembling. After leaving me in Eureka, they moved south, starting Summit with nothing. Success came, but the guilt grew. Losing reputation and career after the bidding hurts less than losing our own son, Daniel said, his eyes red. We followed you from afar, through the press, stories about Benjamin. But we were afraid. Afraid you wouldn't forgive. Ruth cried, Son, I'm sorry. I've never forgotten you, but the shame was too great. I listened silently, without reacting, without blaming. Their words cut like knives into my heart. Eureka memories revived, eating dry bread, hopeless waiting, the fear of being discovered alone. Rage welled up. Asterisk, why didn't you come back? Why leave me alone? Asterisk, but I restrained myself, looking at them. Two old, broken people. I understood that some wounds don't need retaliation. Just time to heal. I've heard, I said gently, my voice steady. They looked at me, hope flickering. But I didn't hug them. Didn't forgive immediately. It wasn't hatred. It was the necessary distance. As they stood to leave, I escorted them to the office door. The wind blew coldly in, carrying the scent of impending rain. Take care, I said, shaking hands lightly. They looked at me, eyes glistening. Son, if you could. But I shook my head lightly. The past is gone. They left, their figures fading down the hallway, and I closed the door, leaning against the wall. My heart ached, tears streaming. Not from disdain, but the way I chose to close the past in silence. That encounter was like a fleeting wind, carrying their regret, but not changing me. I returned to my desk, looking at the contracts and breathed deeply. I'm free now. From then on, Daniel and Ruth withdrew from the business world. They sold Summit cheaply, dissolved the company, and moved to live discreetly in Sacramento, a small house by the river, far from the city lights. Scattered news reported they donated their remaining assets to charity, supporting disadvantaged children, building shelters. One article wrote, The mountain couple seeks redemption through philanthropy. I read it with peace in my heart. Not glee, not resentment. They were trying to make amends in their own way. As for me, Elijah, I continued leading mountain construction with renewed vitality. The company grew tremendously. The Monterey project completed early, winning international awards for sustainability. I opened the Benjamin Foundation, supporting orphans and at-risk youth, scholarships, housing, counseling. This is for kids like I once was, I said at the foundation's launch, my voice emotional. The foundation quickly attracted donations, and I dedicated personal time, visiting shelters, telling stories about Uncle Benjamin. For me, forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but stopping the past from controlling the present. I still remembered Eureka, the note, but now it was motivation, not chains. My new life was proof that kindness and integrity are the greatest legacy one can leave. I married Ella, the one who understood me best, and we had children, teaching them about honesty and resilience. Every birthday, I'd look at the Carmel Sea, remember Uncle, and smile. Thank you, life. The pain was still there, but it made me stronger. Ending now, as I sit here in my office, looking out at the glittering Monterey Bay, I reflect on my journey. It wasn't a fairy tale, but a real journey, every step carrying harsh lessons. My past began on that 13th birthday, abandoned in Eureka, a boy filled with enormous loneliness, eating dry bread, waiting hopelessly. That was the start of hell, yes, but also the foundation for everything that followed. The past doesn't define you, it's just the first brick you use to build the future. I once thought I was a victim, but that very pain taught me to stand up. If I had let the past control me, I'd forever be that boy huddled by the fridge. Instead, I chose to build, one day at a time, with trembling hands at first. Now, I see life like the Carmel Sea, waves crashing endlessly. But you can learn to surf them instead of letting them drown you. My journey was full of suspense, from loneliness to plots, from confrontation to quiet reconciliation. But it taught me that life is worth living when you build with your heart. Call to action. So, tell me, after hearing all this, what do you think? What would you have done in my place, facing those ghosts from your past? I really want to know what's on your mind. Let me know in the comments below.